What's up, everybody? It's the Alex Leak and Friends NFL podcast, back for another week. I'm your host, Alex Leak. We got Dustin on the show. What's up, Dustin? Thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we got a special guest on the show this week, former All-Pro linebacker for over a decade with the Steelers and Seahawks, as well as with the Patriots, former linebacker Chad Brown. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Chad.
Well, happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, it's an honor. This episode is the Week 7 NFL breakdown. So let's get into this. Dustin, you want to start it out?
Yeah, so last Thursday night, the Eagles beat the Giants 22-21. Daniel Jones broke loose for what should have been an 88-yard touchdown run, but instead trips over his own feet before the end zone. Have you ever seen something like this happen before?
Of course. The turf monster, as we call him, is infamous. And you never know when he's going to strike. Sometimes it's a play like Daniel Jones had where he's seemingly running free and all on his own. I can remember Eric Decker. This happened to him a couple times in his career as well. That turf monster will just reach up and grab you out of nowhere, and it got Daniel Jones. For a game that was, decided by 1 point, plays like that can come up and haunt you later on.
Yeah, that was crazy. In the moment, you couldn't help but kind of like laugh, but that's crazy to have that happen like that.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
On Sunday, the Browns improved to 5-2, but they lost star wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. to a torn ACL. For whatever reason, Baker Mayfield seems to play better without OBJ on the field statistically. What do you think of this Browns team as they are right now, 5-2, but a couple bad losses to the best teams, some good teams? What do you think of this Browns team going forward, and you think they can get into the playoffs this year?
They've got a pretty stacked, roster. So I know missing OBJ is going to be, a serious thing for them. But you start looking down their roster. I mean, these guys, they got, Kareem Hunt still healthy at tailback. Andy Janovich is definitely a good fullback. Jarvis Landry is, good at the wide receiver spot. Mm-hmm. Rashard Higgins can certainly catch the football as well. So they've got other players out there. I mean, tight ends, David Njoku. And then defensively, they get the guy who's leading the league, I believe, in quarterback hits or second in quarterback hits, Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
And they've got Vernon as a pass rusher as well. So they're a very talented team. I think the issue with the Browns is going to be how well are they able to sustain this because they're not used to winning. When you're a winning team, people bring their best game to you. They don't overlook you. They study extra tape. The coordinators spend more time preparing for that offense or defense. So, yes, it's been a good start to the season for the Browns. So now at the point of can they sustain without having the experience of being a winning team and how to sustain these kind of things.
Yeah, and in a tough division with, in my opinion, two contenders there with the Ravens and your former team, the Steelers. So we'll see how that goes. Dustin, you got a question?
Yes. So Sam Darnold appears to becoming a bust for the New York Jets. Do you agree with me on that? And is it his fault or more the environment? And with them being 0-7, how does Adam Gase still have that job?
Okay. Sam Darnold, certainly a talented quarterback coming out of USC. And occasionally there is a glimpse or two where you see that. But this Jets team is just so bad. A quarterback who's still in the developing phase of his career. You put Tom Brady there or Peyton Manning or Drew Brees, yeah, they're going to have some success because they're that good. But Sam Darnold is clearly a work in progress. And so to expect that guy to deal with that offensive line, the lack of weapons at the skill positions, and Adam Gase's play calling hasn't necessarily been great, nor has the culture there been great. that's such an uphill climb. So I'm reluctant to call him a bust. I would say the organization has blown this opportunity in the early part of his career to give him best chance for success. But to me, bust means like you're never going to have a shot again.
Mm-hmm.
He's not Jamarcus Russell. He hasn't, sipped syrup and gained a lot of weight and got himself out of the league due to something like that. He's just in an awful, awful situation. And, most quarterbacks are going to struggle in those situations.
Do you agree with then coming out of college, coming into the draft, that fit is such an important thing? Because, you look at Sam Darnold with the Jets, you mentioned Jamarcus Russell with the Raiders. Now Trevor Lawrence is, the Jets seem to have an eye on him. For these quarterbacks coming in, you have to kind of look at these franchises and be like, do I really want to try and develop with that team? Like, is that something that these guys should be thinking about?
You don't really get to pick your team unless you're, the number one pick and you're Eli Manning and you tell somebody you're not going to play for him. The same thing John Elway did here in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
So for these guys who are going to these situations, I mean, some of it's just, I suppose, the luck or the unluck of how the draft unfolds. Think about a guy like Josh Rosen. Certainly talented coming out of UCLA, but lots of turnover for him with head coaches, turnover with teams, turnover with coordinators. How can we possibly expect this kid to be successful? He was still trying to learn the basics of being an NFL quarterback, and you keep switching things up on him. It's almost impossible. So a lot of these guys, and it's seemingly I would put Sam Darnold in that same category, they're in a situation that does not lend itself for them to be successful. And it actually would be more surprising for them to find success in these situations than surprising that they haven't reached their potential.
That's true. That's a very good point. And then I don't know if you saw the end of Falcons-Lions. It's so weird for me to see, when it's coming down to the wire and the running back doesn't want to score a touchdown in these certain situations where Todd Gurley tries to stop at the one, couldn't quite do it. And there's a picture of Gurley laying on the goal line and a Lions defender with his hands up like that's a touchdown, right? Such a weird picture. Did you ever run into situations like that where a team was trying on purpose not to score at the end?
Yeah, and this happens every once in a while around the league where it's more the clock becomes more important than the touchdown. Mm-hmm. So we need to allow them to score, and then as a defender, that's difficult to do to just let somebody score, but you understand the bigger picture. Now, the interesting thing about this particular play is they literally discussed it in the huddle. And there's the NFL Films clip with, I believe the quarterback was mic'd up for the Falcons, and he is telling that, don't score, don't score, don't score. And for whatever reason, Todd Gurley, after he broke that tackle, just could not stop himself in time. It takes a lot of discipline for a guy to be able to do that. I've seen Todd Gurley execute that thing before, take it near the goal line, but don't score. But this time unable to do it. And it's weird because it goes counter to all your training as a football player.
Yeah.
To let them score, and as a running back to fall down before you get to the end zone. But in that situation, it was the right play to make. And his inability to make that play, make the right play, ended up costing the Falcons the ball game.
Yeah, it's one of the craziest things in football when, like you said, going against everything in what you've been trained to do is to always score that touchdown. Dustin, you got a question?
Yeah, my question is, how do you feel about the Pittsburgh Steelers being 6-0? They're playing some great football. Are they real contenders in the AFC, and can that defense stop Patrick Mahomes and the offensive weapons they have?
All right, that defense, they certainly get pressure on the quarterback, but that secondary is still trying to find its way. And, I'm happy that they're 6-0, being a former Steeler. I love when all my former teams do well. I know a lot of the coaching staff there. The defensive coordinator, Keith Butler, was my linebacker coach my last year in Pittsburgh, the 14th year of my career. So I got some, a lot of good friends there who I want to be successful. I'm not surprised that with the return of Ben with Keith Butler getting this defense, particularly that front seven, dialed in, that they've met the success that they've had. But I think this last week against the Titans showed that they are beatable. And you can do some things to them offensively, which can slow them down. They only scored 3 points in the second half last week against the Titans. And then that secondary, they gave up 17 points in the second half last week. So they've got to find a way to be more complete, finish ball games, and they need their secondary to play better in those third down situations.
How about a playoff game in Pittsburgh with the defending champs and Le'Veon coming back to town?
Oh man, that's a pretty compelling matchup right there. Obviously, Le'Veon would be extremely hungry going against his former team. I thought last week against the Broncos, he was okay. Looked like a guy who had some rust, and there was one play where he caused the sack on Patrick Mahomes because he was the pressure relief guy, and the pressure came, and he didn't get his head turned around in time, and Patrick Mahomes was forced to take the sack. So I'd have to think, after a week like that and kind of showing where he was not fully up to speed and seeing all that on tape, he'll be much better prepared this week. It's going to be a battle against those Chiefs. I mean, both teams can score points, and both teams have question marks on defense.
Yeah, I'd love to see that matchup late in the year in January, some cold weather. That'd be a lot of fun to watch. Going to the Dallas Cowboys, they just fell to 2-5 and haven't really been competitive since the Dak Prescott injury, which sucks. Injury is part of the game, but that was a nasty one, and hope he comes back better than ever, or at least as good as he was. But on top of that, in Dallas, I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff going on. Quotes from anonymous players calling out the coaching staff. No quarterback as of right now with Dalton, and I forget who that third string guy is. But what do you see when you look at the Cowboys? They're so talented on that roster, but there's just so much chaos within that team. What do you think when you watch the Cowboys?
I think that play where Dalton was knocked out by the linebacker for the Washington football team, that kind of encapsulates the Dallas Cowboys. Any team with any real sense of pride about who they are and the uniform that they're wearing and they represent would have defended their quarterback.
Yeah.
For them to watch their quarterback get that cheap shot and no one defend him, that tells me they have lost their internal pride about being a Dallas Cowboy, about what all that means and is supposed to carry with you. So, I see a team of some talented, some very high-paid guys who aren't willing to lay it on the line and don't bring any pride to their performance. You're supposed to be one of the best running backs in the NFL, Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah.
Fumble essentially on back-to-back carries. This offensive line certainly has had some injuries, but you would think there would be a culture within the offensive line room where somebody lays a hand on our quarterback, that dude's got to pay. So that none of those things are existing right now in Dallas, and to me, that's the biggest issue, because once that starts happening, then these other things that we're seeing come up. Guys are, getting friendly with reporters and telling them all the inside dirt about the coaching staff and how they don't like things and all that kind of stuff. This is just a snowball that picks up more and more snow as it goes because you've lost your pride in what you do and what you stand for. Yeah,
it's just crazy to see, but a lot, Cowboy haters are loving it, but if you're a Cowboy fan, this has got to be a shock what's happened so far this season.
Do you
Dustin,
think Mike McCarthy can turn that around and find pride in Dallas?
That's a good question. Because I think we saw with Mike in Green Bay, I think he knows how to coach football. But I think navigating tricky personalities, Aaron Rodgers as an example, the Dallas Cowboys, I think, who carry an inflated ego and sense of self because they're Dallas Cowboys, I think maybe that's the worst part of his coaching game. How do I deal with these people in the locker room? How do I keep the culture together? He was unable to do that in Green Bay, and now here, first year in Dallas, it's already starting to fall apart on him. So to answer your question, is he the guy to keep it together? The track record says no.
Yeah, and another interesting thought or something I've seen watching the Cowboys, you talked about Zeke Elliott's fumbling. And everyone expects Zeke to step up with that going down, Zeke to carry the offense and be the workhorse. And I've seen multiple times, I don't tell me what you've seen of this, is Zeke a bad pass blocking running back? Because I've seen him get blown up trying to pass block a lot. And it's like, is there a lack of pride there, or is he just not very good at it?
He sets his feet and tries to just be a stone wall.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm a blitzing linebacker and I got a guy who sets his feet and just tries to take me on, well, I'm just going to try to just run right through your face. And that's what's been happening for him. Is people have just been running right through him.
Yeah.
And so he's got to find a way to change it up. If you give me a linebacker the same look every single time, well, then I know what to do. But if occasionally you go to chop my feet from underneath me, occasionally you go a little bit softer and you try to catch me, and every once in a while you try to stonewall me, you keep switching it up, then that's going to make it more difficult for me to know what you're going to do. So at this point, the book on Zeke is well written. He's going to set his feet and try to just deal with you, face up. And your job is just to run right through him and get some leverage. And that's what we've seen the last couple of weeks.
Wow, that's great insight there. I didn't know that. Dustin, you got one?
Yes. So the Kansas City Chiefs, since winning the Super Bowl, have added Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell. What does that do for their offense? And in your opinion, can anyone stop the Chiefs?
I think that the people who can stop the Chiefs offensively is themselves when they don't execute. And I'll use that play again as an example. Patrick Mahomes was sacked by Bradley Chubb when the Chiefs played the Broncos last week because Le'Veon Bell didn't get his head around and he didn't recognize the pressure. As a running back, if you see the pressure coming, get your head around so your quarterback knows that you're ready to catch the football. So little things like that where they need to get a guy like Le'Veon Bell on the same page are going to be critical for them to kind of move into this very, very difficult to stop mode. But the addition of those two guys, Andy Reid certainly calling a lot more running plays the last couple of weeks. I think it gives an added dimension to their offense. And, yes, you got Patrick Mahomes, but at some point, I know Patrick Mahomes throws the ball well in snow games, but you're going to get a wind game or a rain game where the weather is literally going to take away the passing game, and you're going to have to win the game on the ground. I think Andy Reid recognized that and is putting more emphasis on the run game, and so far it's been paying dividends for them.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like that Tuesday, I believe it was a Tuesday afternoon game or Monday afternoon game, where the Chiefs ran it like 35 plus times against the Bills. They were like ground and pound, and it worked out in their favor. So that's a good point on that.
Yeah.
Were there ever, when you played linebacker in one of the most physical eras of NFL ever, in the 90s and early 2000s. How did you go? Did you go up against any running back that was just physically imposing that you weren't exactly excited to go make the tackle? I feel like Derrick Henry is so big and so, you give him a head of steam, people don't want to try and tackle him. Was there anybody like that for you?
There's always been big running backs, come throughout the league. You think about a guy like Kevin Mack and those Cleveland Brown teams. I mean, that was a tough dude to tackle, particularly on that really bad grass in Cleveland. You could struggle and get your footing. And here comes a 240-pound back who'd rather hit you in the face than gain an extra yard. Yeah, that wears on you over the course of a ball game.
Yeah.
Obviously I played with Jerome Bettis, played against Jerome Bettis. So I've played against, some of these big backs over the years. And the formula is always the same. They may not be super explosive in the first quarter, but as the game wears on and you get a little fatigued and they start picking up some steam, it gets harder and harder to tackle those guys. And we've seen what Derrick Henry can do. And I had that Texans-Titans game that he ended up winning the game in overtime with the Wildcat run. Yeah, then the long run that got them into overtime. Special dude. I've never seen a back that size with the top-end speed that he has.
Yeah.
Jerome had quick feet, and Jerome can make you miss in the hole probably better than Derrick can. But if Derrick gets a step on your secondary, it's amazing to see him pull away at 250 and down to 200 pounds. I've never seen that combination together of that size with that top end speed together in one human being.
That's crazy. Go ahead, Dustin.
Alrighty, so the New England Patriots are struggling, but Tom Brady and the Bucs appear to be hitting their stride, scoring 38 points or more in the last 2 games, dominating fashion. Now they are bringing in star wide receiver Antonio Brown. Do you think we are in for a Bucs versus Chiefs Super Bowl? At least on paper, that's what it looks like to me.
And I know that the Bucs were a popular preseason Super Bowl pick because of Tom Brady, because of guys like Gronk coming in. My concern about Antonio Brown is that Buccaneers boat is headed in the right direction right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen Antonio Brown bring controversy and other things to locker rooms, and derail some teams and at least become a distraction. So if I'm Bruce Arians, I've got a very, very short lease on Antonio Brown. The second something negative comes up, I've got to be prepared to move on quickly because I can't let this guy mess up what we've got going. I did the first game of the season for Compass Media, the Tampa Bay New Orleans game. And, at that point, Bruce Arians and Tom Brady weren't on the same page. He was trying to force Tom Brady to run his offense. And there was a pick six and a couple of other bad throws in that game. And it was clear that Tom wasn't very comfortable. Well, now, after 6 more weeks of football, it seems that they have had a meeting of the minds. They've figured out what kind of offense Tom is comfortable with, how to bring in some of those Bruce Arians concepts to what Tom does. And they've gotten a guy like Gronk going, when he was just kind of a decoy those first couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So you add all that together, plus you bring the speed and explosiveness of an Antonio Brown. If he's on his best behavior, yeah, I could totally see these guys in the Super Bowl.
And so,
go ahead.
Sorry about that. So, if AB comes back with the right mindset, what does he add to the offense? Like is the Tampa's offense more explosive?
It's more explosive. They don't have a receiver like him on the roster. Mike Evans is a big, tall receiver. Uses his big body to shield you off. So they got guys like that, but they don't have that Antonio Brown speed and explosiveness. The guy who can, either run away from a defensive back, or Antonio is one of the better route runners when he's fully healthy and up to speed. He can gain separation on those crossing routes like he used to do in Pittsburgh with Big Ben. They don't have a weapon like that on their roster, so he presents with a whole different skill set. And then, Tom had a chance to work with him when he was in New England briefly last year. So there's probably already a little bit of sense of comfort there as well.
Yeah, and Tom Brady seems to be hitting his stride. So like you said, you bring in Antonio Brown, as long as it doesn't mess up the chemistry, that could be something special to watch, that offense. But, yeah, like you said, Bruce Arians is going to have him on a short leash because I'm pretty sure he never wanted Antonio Brown. This is like Tom Brady's guy trying to get him in there. So we'll see how that works. Let's go to – you played for the Patriots a couple times in your career. On Sunday, they suffered their worst home loss in the Bill Belichick era since the year 2000. Do you still think this Patriot team can turn it around? And, what do you think the issue is? In my opinion, going back to Carolina, Cam Newton had issues with his throwing shoulder and had surgery on it and was messing with a new throwing arm angle and stuff like that. In my opinion, there's a lot of inconsistencies and inaccuracy in his arm at times. Do you think that's an issue for Cam Newton going forward?
I think it is. I think it is. The Patriots are as good as any team in the NFL at finding what their players do well and trying to put them in positions to be successful. And we saw that for the first couple of weeks with the Patriots. Then Cam gets COVID, doesn't have a chance to practice very much. They get beat by the Broncos, don't put up very many points in that game. And then clearly they were not on the same page this last week against the 49ers. 49ers, bring a very good brand of defense. Robert Saleh is a good defensive coordinator. They certainly have a good, front seven that can get after you. And for the Patriots, they need to try to find some balance for Cam to be successful. They've got to run the ball with him to, put 8 guys in the box so then Cam can pass against a light secondary look. And they've been unable to do that these last couple of weeks. Now, no one circles the wagons as well as the Patriots. The Patriots very rarely lose 2 in a row, much less 3 in a row. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure Bill will find something for them to get on track. But I think in the end, the limitations of what Cam can bring and who he is going to limit the Patriots this season.
Yeah, that's crazy. Dustin, you got another question?
Yeah, so this year the Bears offense has been struggling. And do you think what is wrong with their offense, and is it a coaching issue? I personally think that it's the GM because, they had passed up, in future drafts on Mahomes and Watson.
Well, they have had success with Trubisky. And Nick Foles, they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl with Nick Foles at quarterback, the Philadelphia Eagles did. So both those guys have had times where they've played well. Now, yeah, certainly the drafting of Trubisky, moving up in the draft to get him, that's been criticized a lot. But, the coaches made the decision to go with Nick Foles, and so far he's playing worse than Trubisky did early in the season. So
I love to hear you say that.
I'm not sure what that move accomplished. But then as a coach, how do you go back to the first guy? Because you sold your team on the second guy. You sold the media on the second guy. This is the guy that's going to get us right. I got to make this one move, and we're all going to be, it's all going to be good from here on out. And now you got to go away from that guy.
Yeah.
That's a difficult situation to be in as a team and as an organization. But it is clear that the offense is holding the Bears back. They play a really good brand of defense. But it's also clear that the quarterback and Nagy, who's the play caller on offense, they haven't been on the same page despite having 2 different quarterbacks under center this year.
Yep. And that leads me to your point. 'Cause I'm a Bears fan, and I watch that team closely. And what you said about the Patriots playing to your players' strengths, playing to the strengths of your roster is what they do best. It's what Nagy and this Bears team is not doing. Trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. They're trying to make Foles and Trubisky in this offense be something that it's not. And it's so frustrating as a Bears fan. I'm completely out the door on Matt Nagy. Do you think that he is the issue and he should consider giving up offensive play calling?
I think he's got to look at something like that because, what they say the definition of insanity is, keeping doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Yeah.
You tried a different quarterback, same results. So is it the quarterbacks or is it you as a play caller? And I'm always struck by coaches who are unwilling to bend their system to suit the players that they have.
Yeah.
I understand your system is great, but it's not great with this player. And these are the players that are on your team. So now you've got to do some adapting and some adjusting. And the coaches who are insistent upon running their system, in the end, it's just ego, but it doesn't help the team win games. So for Nagy and the Bears, they've got to find a way to step back a little bit, perhaps watch some of the tape of what the Eagles did with Nick Foles, watch some of the things of Trubisky that he did in college, find the things that those guys were comfortable with, find the things that brought those guys success, and then try to call plays like that.
Yep, exactly. You're preaching on that one. Now let's go to, so you were quite the pass rusher in your day. You recorded 79 career sacks. Now, I don't know if you had to go up against these athletes like Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson, these guys. How would you approach trying to pass rush these super athletic quarterbacks?
Man, that's, easier said than done.
Yeah.
Obviously those guys have such a speed advantage over any pass rusher. And let's not forget, as a pass rusher, I've got to beat an offensive tackle who's 6'6", 320 just to even have a chance at sacking either one of those guys. So it takes a complete effort. you can't just, quickly beat your guy and then try to get around the edge because they're going to sense that, step up and go. So it takes all four guys as pass rushers to, present a kind of a mushed kind of pocket. The edge guys need to get far enough upfield to where if he wants to escape the pocket, it's going to be very difficult to go around the edges. He's got to step up. Those inside guys have to push the pocket back onto the lap of the quarterback. That's how you deal with those guys. If you're going to go out there and try to one-on-one it and just, beat your offensive lineman in front of you, it's not going to do you any good if he just runs away from you every single time. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be a concerted effort. And at some point as a pass rusher, you've got to put your ego aside a little bit. Yeah, I know I can beat this tackle around the edge, but if I do that, Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson, they're just going to step up into that hole and take off and pick up a first down.
Yeah.
Play the smart game. Don't play the aggressive game. That's what you got to do with that style quarterback.
Yeah, that's great insight there. And one last question. I appreciate the time. So I've had a lot of beef with this. The officials throwing flags for hard hits. We asked these officials to tell in live speed if a hit was clean or not, if there was head contact or not. When we watching TV and even the announcers and commentators can't tell until they go to replay and slow it down and see whether it was clean or not. I hate seeing defenders get penalized for a textbook great hard hit that's clean and doesn't hit the helmet, Is there a case to be made for making these penalties reviewable?
I think there is a case to be made. And I'm a fan of the push for safety in football. Mm-hmm. Big fan of it. Better equipment, legislating the game differently, calling the game differently, creating rules around that. Because in the end, we want football to be here in 10 years, and 20 years, and 50 years. And who ultimately makes that decision, it's going to sound crazy, but it's the moms of America who make this decision. If mom thinks little Timmy can go out there and play football and be safe, then little Timmy gets to play football. If mom thinks little Timmy's going to have concussions and have dementia when he's older, mom's not going to let him play. So the NFL is always going to, I think, err on the side of safety rather than, aggressive physical play because of that factor. Does it get frustrating to be a defensive player? I'm sure it does. I was fined a lot of money in my career for hits on quarterbacks and things like that. So I understand that frustration. But now, having stepped away from the game and not, being as personally involved, I see what the NFL is trying to do, and I respect it. And I know how difficult that job is for the officiating crew. But I think to your point, since now so many of these officiating decisions are now done back in New York at the NFL offices, have the refs throw the flag, because we need to throw the flag, number one, to let the defenders know, number one, because it's still such a bang-bang play. If it's any question about it, throw the flag. But then New York can just buzz the, umpire and let them know, hey, we're good here. It was a clean hit, next play. So that kind of thing I think needs to be worked into the game, where we try our best to always adhere to the safety line, but we also give ourselves a chance to make sure the play was called properly.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great take on that. And I hope they can figure that out sooner than later, because it's just so frustrating, when your team makes a great defensive play. Like in that Bears-Bucs game, when Kyle Fuller made a really good tackle, knocked the ball out. It was a catch and fumble. And, they didn't. They got the call right, but I was shocked because 99% of the time, they're not going to get that call right, and they're going to flag it just on precaution and, being safe.
In college football, it's even worse. Guys get ejected for these kind of things.
Yeah,
so,
that's so unfair. Yeah.
So I'm looking for both the NFL and for the NCAA to modify those rules. Again, I'm all for the safety stuff, but enough circumstances have come up now. I think we need to relook and re-examine how we want to deal with that.
Yeah, and that's a really great take about the parents, and believing that the game is safe, because otherwise the kids aren't going to be able to play. Dustin, you have one more question?
Yeah, I'm just curious. How do you feel about Aaron Donald? Do you think he could become the greatest defensive lineman of all time, and can anybody stop his pass rush?
Wow. If we would have had this conversation 5 years ago, we'd have been talking about J.J. Watt. And saying the same things. J.J. Watt is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. But injuries have derailed his last couple of seasons. And I believe he's missed something like 32 games over the last 3 or 4 years. A lot of games. So that kind of career trajectory that, Aaron Donald was on, we could say that same thing about J.J. Watt. And now this conversation has shifted. J.J. Watt's a good player. We like J.J. Watt. He makes a couple of plays a game, but we don't think of him the same way. So Aaron Donald, in order to attain what you're talking about there, he's got to find a way to stay healthy. And he's got to find a way to, to get nicked up a game or two is one thing, but to miss, huge parts of seasons as J.J. Watt has these last couple of years, then that takes away what we're talking about. As far as his pass rush, man, he's got so many different things that he can do to you, and his ability to constantly play the chess match of, as I was talking about earlier with Ezekiel Elliott as a pass blocker, same thing with Aaron Donald. Is he going to go quick hands and, try to get his hip around your hip and get to the side of you? That could work. Is he just going to forklift you up? That works. Is he going to put his head, his forehead on your chin and bull rush right through you? Well, that works. So he's got so many different moves. As an offensive lineman, a lot of times you're not exactly sure what to do. And then I think sometimes these offensive line coaches end up screwing their offensive linemen up because they come up with schemes that they don't normally do and they don't normally practice. So they say, we're going to double team Aaron Donald. Well, these guys don't normally double team people in pass blocking situations. So when is my teammate responsible for the inside gap? And when am I responsible for the outside gap? Mm-hmm. So sometimes I see these guys go try to double team Aaron Donald, and they end up screwing themselves up. Now, part of that is because Aaron Donald is just that good. If you leave him one-on-one, he's going to win sometimes. So coaches say, well, let's double team him. That also brings up its own issues. So he can defeat double teams. He can defeat triple teams I've seen, and he certainly has a number of ways to defeat one-on-one blocks. So the only thing that's going to stop Aaron Donald is a lack of health. That's the only thing that's going to slow him down.
Wow. Great insight, Chad. It was awesome having you on the show, and you brought it today. It was excellent talking some football with you.
Great to be on with you guys, and I'm sure we'll talk someplace down the road.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you and an honor.
Yeah,
right on, fellas. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah, we appreciate the time. Have a great week. If you want to follow Chad Brown on Twitter, it's at ChadBrown94. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and let us know what you guys think. Have a great week, guys, and peace out.